we are talking about human milk oligosaccharides. Let's start up with the basics. We are talking about what? This is a part of breast milk?
Mm-hmm. So human milk oligosaccharides are complex sugars that mothers produce in very large quantities in their breast milk. And one way to think about them is fiber. So mothers produce a huge amount of fiber in their breast milk that the infant actually cannot consume. It sort of flows through the infant. And one of the goals of the human milk oligosaccharides is to affect the infant's gut bacteria.
You're saying they are not absorbed, not at all, or partially absorbed?
The gut does not process them, so they're not absorbed. They might make it into the bloodstream. They've actually been found throughout the urine and the blood, but it is more is not absorbed as a nutrient in that fashion. Yeah.
So can you see these oligosaccharides as a unit which acts without helpers like enzymes which are in breast milk, or are they embedded in a system in breast milk which we hopefully will understand quite few in the future?
You know, it's a complex question. There's many different functions for almost every molecule in human milk, and human milk oligosaccharides are no different. One of their functions involves direct stimulation of the immune system or interaction with human cells in a positive way. Other interactions are to block pathogenic bacteria from binding to human cells. And then another interaction is to enrich in the colon specific beneficial bacteria. So there's multiplicity of function in human milk oligosaccharides.
Okay, let's go to the microbiota. The HMOs influence the microbiota.
Mm-hmm.
How?
So, like fiber does, they make it all the way down to the colon undigested. And in the colon, there's a subset of bacteria that typically are enriched there that can actually process those complex sugars and use them for food. And so those bacteria can become enriched. They ferment the food, the human milk oligos, and they can they can produce end products that are in turn food for the colonocytes.
That's in the adult. And how about the baby during the first day of life? They have a gut which has different microbiota. Is it the same? Or?
Yeah, it's a very good question. When we're born, we are somewhat sterile, if that's a way of describing it, and our intestinal tract becomes colonized by many different mechanisms. By the fact that we're close to our mother, so we share some of her microbes. Of course, we drink breast milk, so the microbes in the milk will colonize. And in a sense, milk farms the microbiota in the child, and it helps raise the right microbes and helps prevent the wrong microbes.
So, if HMO raise the right microbiota, what is the function then in the body? Does it improve certain immune functions, or what is it doing?
So it's doing a couple of different things. One is it's helping enrich a specific population of bacteria. Bifidobacteria is commonly found in breastfed infants. And there's several mechanisms by which that could be helpful. First and foremost, bifidobacteria produce end products of fermentation, acetate and lactate, and that is well known to, one, lower the pH of the colon, which makes it harder for other pathogens, for instance, to grow in that same environment. It's also consuming the only food that's available in that environment. So by consuming the only food, other organisms have trouble gaining access to that niche if all the food is consumed. Also, the short-chain fatty acids produced, the acetate and the lactate that's produced, are well known to stimulate the immune system in a positive way. They're well known to improve barrier function of the colon in a positive way. And so having a strong fermentation occurring in the colon has been associated with a healthier infant and has been for 100 years.
There are caveats, for sure. We are talking about the term infant at the present moment. How about the preterm infant, the very low birth weight infant, extremely low birth weight infant? What would be your reaction if I ask you,
Well, certainly in infants where the traditional colonization of the GI tract has been disrupted, and that might be in premature infants, or it might be in infants that receive antibiotics often early on, or it might be in a variety of situations where the gut microbiota has been changed dramatically. You're going to see an assemblage to try to consume the human milk oligosaccharides if organisms are present that can actually do it. There might be no organisms present, and the human milk oligosaccharides will literally just flush right out of the baby. Other organisms can consume human milk oligosaccharides besides bifidobacteria, but the mechanism of that consumption can leave residual sugars behind, residual food behind. And who comes up to eat that residual food may be okay or may not be so okay. And so in premature infants or in other situations where the infant might be dysbiotic, there is the chance that human milk oligosaccharides can actually cross-feed a population of bacteria that we'd rather not see there. That might, as a population, have some risk associated with it.
So the high-risk population would be here
premature infants first and foremost.
Those who receive antibiotics.
Antibiotics, absolutely.
Those who are in ICUs.
Yes.
Where specific bugs might float around.
Find their way in. Yeah.
Okay.
Or pathogen-rich environments in different parts of the world.
I understand. Now, if HMOs are an interesting topic, there is more and more coming up in the literature, and industry might think about putting HMOs, if they can produce them, into formula. What would be your criteria to establish safety of those formulas?
I think this is a really good question, and one that needs a lot of thinking and additional science. I think for most children this is a really good thing, that the idea that we can get these complex oligosaccharides that are naturally in breast milk into formulas in hopes of generating a gut microbiota that is similar to a breastfed term infant is a good thing. We want to achieve that goal. The safety concerns that I would imagine, or the concerns that I would have, are what is the microbiome of the child that you're actually delivering the food to, the human milk oligos to, and what is the risk of this cross-feeding I talk about, or enriching a population that might be associated with some risk. It might be that different parts of the world, that infants in different parts of the world harbor different microbiotas, and we need to understand their responsiveness to these kinds of introductions.
So testing would mean you're not only testing growth and health, you're looking at the microbiome.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be looking at the microbiome to make sure that we are enriching healthful populations.
And can I speculate that there would be, if there's a risk, it would be higher in developing countries? Or?
The irony of that is that when we've looked at populations in developing countries, they actually have more bifidobacteria than we see in more developed countries. But more developed countries, of course, have not many pathogens in their environment, and so we have less risk. So I think it needs to be equally looked at in both populations.
When you would test such products in term infants first, what would be your efficacy criteria?
For me, I would be looking at the microbiota shifts first and foremost, because I think we want to understand are the HMOs feeding the populations are we getting the response we would expect? One of the benefits of HMOs is to enrich to be bifidogenic, to enrich a bifidobacterial population. We would like to see that and ensure that that's reproducible But we also need to look at those populations that don't respond and understand what's happening in them as well. So I think it's going to just take thorough analysis. I think this is a good move. We need to be more like breast milk, but we have to understand those children that don't respond.
Okay, thank you very much.